There are things that happen in this world that the living were never supposed to witness, not because they are evil, but because they are too large, too old, too final. What happened in Akotogbo on this particular night was one of those things, and every living soul within its borders felt it, whether they understood it or not. It started with the wind, the harmattan that had been blowing steadily through Akotogbo all night, the dry cold wind that rattled the palm fronds and pushed smoke sideways from the cooking fires. Stopped, not slowed, stopped between one breath and the next, gone, as though something enormous had inhaled and simply forgotten to exhale. The silence that followed was not peaceful. It was the silence of every living thing in Akotogbo simultaneously understanding that something was wrong, without knowing what, without knowing why, with only their bodies telling them what their minds could not yet process. Dogs that had been barking since nightfall went quiet at exactly the same moment. Every fire in every hut dropped, not out, just lower, just enough, as though the air feeding them had been redirected somewhere else entirely. A young mother sitting up nursing her infant felt her child go completely still against her chest, not sleeping, listening, the baby's eyes wide open in the dark, staring at nothing she could see. She pulled her child closer and did not know why her hands were shaking. In her hut at the edge of the village, Ikoko woke up. She had not been deeply asleep. She never was anymore, not for the past 30 years. Not since the night she first felt what she felt tonight. Faint, distant, a whisper of it, and spent 3 decades telling anyone who would listen that it was coming. Nobody had listened, but Ikoko had prepared anyway. She sat up on her mat and looked at her medicine pots lined against the wall. Every single one of them was vibrating, faintly, almost imperceptibly. But she knew her pots the way a mother knows her children, and they had never done this before, not even 30 years ago when she first felt the tremor. Whatever was happening tonight was bigger than anything she had prepared for. She rose from her mat faster than a woman her age had any right to move, and she began. At the riverbank, Baba Ajoke arrived. He had known where to go, the way you know things in the deepest parts of the night. Not with reason, with something older. He stood at the edge of the muddy bank and looked at the river, and the river looked wrong. He could not have explained how. The water was still there. The moon was still reflecting in it. The palm trees were still lining both banks. But something about it was wrong, in a way that reached past his eyes and grabbed something in his chest and squeezed. Then he saw the calabash lamp, floating, his wife's calabash lamp, the one she had been keeping alive for 3 days at this bank, floating on the dark water surface, still glowing its last, drifting slowly toward the center of the river. And then he saw Mama Joke, sitting in the middle of the river, in the riverbed itself, the water around her receding, pulling back, as though the river was slowly lowering itself around her, like a stage being prepared for something. The fear that hit him was not the kind that comes from seeing something dangerous. It was the kind that comes from seeing something that should not be possible. His legs were moving before he decided to move them, toward the bank, toward the water, his body wanting to go in after her. And then the ground beneath his feet breathed. He stopped, looked down. The mud around his feet was moving, slowly, rhythmically, like the earth itself had a pulse, like the ground he was standing on was alive and breathing and aware of him standing on it. Baba Ajoke was not a man who frightened easily, but he took one step back from the water's edge, then another, his whole body shaking in a way he could not stop. He looked at the floating calabash lamp, still burning, And he understood, in the way that people understand things they cannot explain, that his job right now was not to go in, it was to make sure that lamp did not go out. He reached into the water at the very edge of the bank, cupped the floating lamp in both hands, lifted it from the water, and held it, shaking, terrified, but holding it. In the river, Mama Joke felt the water change. It happened slowly. The cold, dark river around her waist. The water she had waded into with nothing but a dying lamp and 30 years of love and the specific recklessness of someone who has nothing left to lose, became warm. Not river warm, not sun on water warm, human warm, body warm, the warmth of something living pressed against her from every direction simultaneously. And Mama Joke understood, with a clarity that bypassed thought entirely and went straight to the bone, that she was not standing in water anymore. She was standing inside something. The fear came then. Real fear. The kind she had been holding back for 3 days with grief and anger and stubbornness. It came all at once. Her heart slamming against her ribs, her breath coming short, every instinct she possessed screaming at her to get out of this river immediately. Her body began to shake. She sat down because her legs gave way. She sat in the warm, receding riverbed, and she shook, and she could not stop shaking, and the water around her kept lowering itself slowly around her. An invitation, a direction, a path downward opening beneath her. And every part of her that was human and mortal and sane was screaming. But she did not leave. She pressed her hands flat against the warm riverbed beneath her, and she began to pray, not quietly, not privately, out loud, right there in the river, right there inside, whatever this was, right there in the body of the thing that had taken her daughter. Oluwa, she said, her voice shaking, you see me, you see where I am, you see what has been done to my child. The river did not move. I know you see it. Her voice steadied slightly, just slightly. I am not leaving this water. I am not leaving this place, not without my daughter. You hear me? Not without my Ajoke. She pressed her hands deeper into the warm riverbed. Whatever this thing is beneath me, whatever is down there, it took something that belongs to you. That child belongs to you. And I am asking you, right here, right now, in front of whatever is listening, bring her back to me. The water around her stilled completely, not receding anymore, not rising, just still. Listening deep beneath the river, on her throne, Omija listened to every word and felt nothing shaking her, not one tremor, not one crack, because this, exactly this, was what she had been waiting for. Not the prayer itself, the woman saying it, a mother willing to sit inside a goddess and pray to something older and greater than the goddess herself. That specific combination, in all her centuries, had never happened before, until tonight. The faintest suggestion of something crossed Omiji's face. Not fear, not anger, something that, if you looked very carefully and very quickly before it disappeared, looked almost like relief. Inside the palace, Orija felt the veil tear. It moved through him like lightning through water, instant, total, everywhere at once. His white robe exploded outward around him. The blue flame lamps on every wall flared simultaneously. Bright, too bright, then settling, and every carved face in the palace floor opened their eyes, all of them, at exactly the same moment. Hundreds of faces, thousands, every girl Omija had ever taken, every firstborn daughter of Akotogbo going back to the very beginning, all of them looking up at Ajoke. Ajoke screamed, not a small sound, not a gasp, a full body scream that came from somewhere beneath her ribs, raw and complete, and entirely human, tears flooding her face before the sound had even finished leaving her mouth. She stumbled backward, away from the faces, away from the eyes, her hands raised in front of her as though she could push the sight of it away. Orija was beside her in an instant, not touching her, just there, his presence the only stable thing in a palace that was suddenly vibrating with something ancient and enormous. A joke, his voice low, urgent. She was still screaming, still crying, her whole body shaking. A joke. Look at me. She looked at him. His face was the most frightened she had ever seen it, not because of the faces, because of what the faces meant. My mother opened the veil, he said quietly. All of it. She has never done this before. Not once, in all the centuries. Ajok stared at him, tears streaming. What does that mean? He looked at the thousands of open eyes in the floor around them. It means, he said, that she is trying to end something. In the oldest parts of the realm, the first one felt the veil tear like a door blowing off its hinges. 100 years of darkness, 100 years of the same walls, the same pressure, the same silence. And then, all at once, a crack of light, so enormous it was not light at all, but the memory of light, the idea of light, the possibility of light after so long, without it, that the first one pressed herself against it and held on with everything she had. She did not know what was happening above her. She did not need to. She knew only one thing. The walls of the realm were thinner tonight than they had ever been, and she had been waiting for thin walls for 100 years. She began to move. In Akotogbo, Ikoko stepped outside her hut. She looked at the sky, at the stopped wind, at the dimmed fires, at the dogs sitting perfectly still in the compound around her, staring at the river. She looked at the river in the distance, and she said, to nobody, to the stopped wind, to the night itself, finally. She went back inside and kept preparing.